Okay, I'm going to attempt to do my joining instructions for my mountain adventure or scarf shawl this way. We'll see how it works. Okay, so I've done all of my knitting except for joining. I have two pieces in all of my 12 colors, you can see. It's all squished together, but it's a triangle. And then here is exactly the same triangle, all on the same long needle. I wove in most of my ends here on the wrong side, but on one triangle, but not on the other. So you can see here what they look like before you've woven them in. And the only thing I've left of day 12, the regular yarn, is this. So I was able to do the same number. You can see I will include a ridge count. If you're doing this in fingering, you're not going to necessarily have the same number of rows as me. If you're doing it in DK, you're definitely not. But your gauge may be a little different. But you can see how we go from many rows down to, what is this, like day 2 color is like 8 garter ridges, which is 16 rows. And then we've got 6 for day 3, which is 12 rows. And then 5 for day 4, 5 garter ridges, which is 10 rows. And then day 5, here the bluest, the Vatnacouli is same. It's also 5 ridges. And then day 6 is 4 ridges because I didn't have enough to do 5. And then Pikes Peak, which what was that? 7 is also 4 ridges. Then Monica, day 8 is also, wait, that one is the 4 ridges as well, the black one. And then Mount Fuji, it goes down to 3 ridges, and the rest of my rows all can do 3 ridges, which is 6 rows. So then we have Kilimanjaro, Machu Picchu, and then Dolomites all have 3 ridges, which is 6 rows, because the rows get really long. Okay. So then and because I am going to bind off with the Big Yeti, and to bind off and join, I did not have to reserve some of the Dolomite day 12 Dolomite regular yarn. This is all I have left, but that's fine because I'm going to bind off and join with this. If you don't like working with this, you may need to do just 2 garter ridges and save enough yarn to finish the bind off and the join. I'm gonna love playing with this texture, but maybe this kind of yarn isn't your thing. That's why I gave it to you extra. So, okay. I've got these 2 pieces. They're all facing the same direction on one long piece of yarn. And the pieces they're all facing together, but they need to be joined right here. And this needs to be bound off, and this needs to be bound off. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to start with the first triangle, binding off of half of it with this yarn. I'll show you a little bit of it, and then I'll pause, and then I'll come back. So I'm going to do it when I'm facing the right side. So not this one. I need to do it right. I need to face the right way, right side. Yes. Okay, so it's this one. So I'm facing the right side. And I can tell because I have clear demarcations of the colors. You see, then there's the wrong side right here that the colors meld when I change them. I'm going to face the right side. I've also marked the right side with a stitch marker, my little snowflake, but maybe you long ago eschewed that, or maybe that's not your thing. But I marked the right side. I'm going to have the right side facing me on the triangle, and this one happens to have the end that I just finished my last row with right there, but I'm not going to use this to bind off. I'm going to use the other yarn. And I'm just going to do a normal stretchy bind off. I'll give myself a little bit extra here, put them together. And then I'm just going to bind off. So I'm going to knit, the normal knit two, and then bind off. Now this technically is a DK weight yarn. I'm using it on an edge, so it shouldn't matter as much. But all I'm doing is just a regular bind off here. And this is going to be a really long row, so I'm going to pause and then come back. So I'm just doing a long row, bind off with the fuzzy yarn, but be sure to bind off loosely. So I'll pause my recording and come back. Okay, I'm back. All right. That took me at least 15 minutes to just bind off this one side. And you can see, since I did it with the fuzzy yarn, obviously I have no stitch definition, but it just kind of gives it a little fuzzy edge, just a little fuzzy edge. And I kind of liked the play with the texture. But of course, you may want to do it with the regular yarn. Leave yourself enough yarn to do that. So I just started bind off with the regular yarn. All I did was a stretchy, no, I didn't even do a stretchy bind off. I just did a regular bind off with like exaggerating the stitches so that they don't get too tight. Okay, this still obviously is unblocked, but I think it gives them like an interest to the edge. And now I've gone all the way up. You're looking at the right side. That was the side I was looking at when I was binding off. All the way to my stitch markers. Okay, and this is just on one triangle. Okay, you see the stitch markers are the middle. Okay, and I've just left this one. I got to bind off that one, and then I'm going to start joining the first triangle to the second, which is this join right here. So I've done this. Okay, done that. Now I'm going to do the join. And I don't even have to if I'm done it all on one long cable needle, you'll see I don't have to move anything around. Kind of looks like you would, but as long as you bind these off, then you're able to line these up to join them right sides facing the same way, and then just perform the regular same bind off that I did on the last part that I did right here. But I want to show you how to get this because in your head, it might not make sense. I have to pause for a moment. I'll come back. Okay, sorry, I have to pause this, but this is just how my life is lately. Okay, so I am doing like the last stitch of the regular bind off. And then I get to my stitch markers that I have two of them marking the center stitch. And I'm going to take my stitch marker off. And then I'm going to start joining at this. I don't think it's going to matter that much if I was one stitch off. Okay, but I took one stitch marker off and I'm going to start doing the join. So how do I do the join? Okay, here, I've got one stitch in my fuzzy yarn. I'm going to slide that on the needles just to hold it. Okay, and I need to have right side out on, the second half of this triangle. And then the other triangle, I need to have its wrong side facing. So I need wrong sides together here. This is wrong side, this is wrong side, wrong sides together. And then, so that means right side out on like facing me on the second half of the triangle that I've started binding off. And the other one, see if I flip it over, that's right side. That's also a right side. You see how it's the beginning of the second triangle. Okay, and they're wrong sides together, and the needles to get up together side by side. And now I'm going to do a 3 needle bind off with the fuzzy yarn, with the Big Yeti yarn, which of course I'm getting tangled. Of course, I'm going to like put my little ball through the loop here. I think that's what I'm doing. There. I think I got Yeah, yeah. All right. So wrong, wrong sides together, right in here, wrong sides together, right sides out. And I've got the tip of my second triangle, okay, and the middle of the first triangle that's facing me, okay, middle of the second. And I'm lining up the needles here, okay. Now it's a 3 needle bind off, but I can use pretty much any needle. I want to make these stitches big, so I've just got this DPN, but you could use another needle. You just need a needle to do the bind off. It's not going to actually hold any stitches other than the one or two. So, and then I'm going to slide my fuzzy yarn back on there. Okay, so now I've got the stitch. This is going to be doing my work bind off, and these guys are going to be holding stitches. So I need to do regular 3 needle bind off, which is a little harder to show from this angle. But I'm knitting through both of them. Okay, with the third needle. And I need in there. There's my yarn, wrapping around the third needle, the wooden one, pulling that back through. So I'm just doing like a regular bind off, except I'm treating these as like stitch by stitch. I'm knitting through each one of them with the same stitch here. So I'm almost treating them as one. Okay, so I'm knitting through. It's a little slower than a regular bind off because you don't want to drop stitches until I have two on my wooden needle, and then using the tip of one of the other ones to bind off. And you got to just make these stitches loose, just like I did on the first one. So that's all I'm doing is a regular 3 needle bind off, wrong sides together, right sides out. And because I already bound off the first half of my triangle here, you're looking at the wrong side of it. I bind that off, then everything is lined up then. And I don't even have to slide a bunch of stitches off of one needle and onto another one. If you happen to do this on 2 separate needles, it'll be even easier for you, but I did it on one big long needle. So now this is going to take me a while. And I'll probably have to come back and make a second part of this video, but just do a 3 needle bind off on this whole join, right sides out, wrong sides together, until I get to the end of the first triangle and the middle of the second triangle. And then I'll be left with this last half to just bind off as normal. And I don't have to cut the fuzzy yarn at all. Like I'm able to go from one end of my shawl all the way to the other end. Now, this is not 20 grams. So I know this wouldn't be enough for a lot of rows, but it should be more than enough for this bind off. And I think I'm going to do some tassels with it. We'll see, but I'll come back and show you at the end. So I think it's time for me to close and go home and do all the kid thing. I'm gonna have to come back to this and give you a second part. Okay? So bye for now. Here you can see I am binding off with the fuzzy yarn by knitting through each of the 2 stitches on the needle with my spare DPN. Okay, and sometimes pushing them off can be a little tricky, but if you do it slow, you should be fine. And then this is just a normal bind off, but I'm just trying to do the stitches loosely. And sometimes you can lose that stitch, but you just got to do it a little bit slow because you're dealing with an extra needle here and an extra stitch. That is how you do a regular 3 needle bind off. And in a minute, I'm going to show you an option that only you might want to consider using, but only if you're not using a fuzzy yarn here. This fuzzy yarn gets rid of all of your stitch definition. So I'll show you one other option if you're not to consider if you're not using the fuzzy yarn. Here is an option where I'm just using the regular yarn, and you see I'm doing a regular like knitting the 2 together. It's a regular 3 needle bind off. But if you want it to be even, consider purling every other set. See, here I am putting the yarn in front and I'm purling them together instead of knitting them together. That'll move a half of the bumps to the front side of your bind off, and if you just knit the next one, then the purl bump will be in the back side. So I'm knitting the 2 stitches off, and then binding it off, and then I'm purling. Now, you wouldn't want to bother with this if it was the fuzzy yarn because you won't even really see it. But if it is a smoother yarn, this will be more balanced. You're still going to have to go slow because it's easy to drop some stitches, got more stuff that you're dealing with. But look, you might be able to see here, it just kind of gives you the purl bumps on every other side. It's just another option to consider. Either one will work. Okay, so here is the final thing all done. All right, so I had, let's see, I think I started over here with the bind off. You can see the little fuzzy edge that you get. I really kind of like that. And look what I did with the rest. I did add tassels. So even if you don't want to knit with this yarn or even wind it, you can make some tassels by just cutting the hank and wrapping it and making some fuzzy little tassels. Here is the bind off on the first triangle, and then here is the rogue nail. Here is the bind off, 3-needle bind off with the fuzzy yarn. Okay, so it kind of gives you like a little stripe on one side, on the right side. On the other side, you don't really kind of see it. So on the front side, you can see. And then I finished with the bind off on the other half of the second triangle. And at the very, very end, I added tassels with the rest of my fuzzy yarn, just because I wanted to embrace the little bit of texture on the edge. So hope you enjoyed that. Using a little bit of contrast. And if you didn't use the fuzziness, then you will just see a different like raised little ridge there. So thanks. I hope that helped.